civil rights.
Yes. So. All right, can everyone hear me and can everyone see the screen, the PowerPoint? Yes, thank you, Hope. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. We'll start the webinar. Thank you all for joining us. This is mandatory and therefore it is being recorded. The recording is on now. It started 8 minutes ago. But welcome, I am Sulin Jones. I am going to tell you everything you need to know about the paperwork portion of your LSTA subgrant. Okay, so here are our agenda items. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're going to talk about 9 things. And I've got 41 slides and I've allocated an hour. Okay, so of everyone here, just raise your hand if this is your first LSTA project that you personally have managed. Okay, we said one newbie, 2 newbies. Okay, excellent. Feel free to interrupt and ask questions at any time because I can go rather quickly, but I don't want anyone to, I don't want to just gloss over anything. Okay. Okay, so for the first thing on the agenda item is the LibGuide. Has everybody had a chance to look at the LibGuide? Yes? Okay, if you haven't, the LibGuide is where I have tried to put everything 2024 LSTA that there is to be had. So it's a lot of information. I've organized it so that you've got apply, everything you need to apply is in one tab, everything you need to manage is a second tab. All the little tabs underneath the main tab, those go to sections. So if you're looking for the grant manual, you should just be able to click on grant manual and get right to it. I can help anybody figure out where anything is if you need it because it's organized by apply, manage, and then you can look at all the other tabs, webinars, required docs. So as I said, it's super dense. Every doc is there. If it's not there, I should have a little notation that says coming soon because I haven't yet finalized it, but it will all be here. That doesn't mean you can't contact me because a lot of people do and it's totally fine. If you like self-service though, you can look here. The next thing I want to talk about is the required signature forms. You are not allowed to start your project. You're not given your yes, I can put everything in chat. You aren't allowed to start your project until you've done a complete set of signature forms. So I have them from all of you. I don't know that you are actually the people who sign it. And so we're going to go over what these signature forms mean for your project. And as project managers, I've highlighted the things that I think are probably most important to you. But let me see if I can pull this. Can I pull? Oh, actually, I can't seem to pull that at the moment. What's going on? What's going on with Teams? In 1 minute while I get this link. Okay. While I find chat. Okay. Okay. So signature forms, right? The first is they're numbered: assurances and certifications, SIPA, the single audit and risk assessment. LSTA assurances and certifications come directly from the federal government. They come from IMLS, and the state library is required to sign them. And we are also required to have all of our subgrantees sign them. So You can see it in blue. NSLAPR provides assurances that it will include as applicable the language of the assurances and certifications in all sub-awards. Right, I did a little overview of what those were in the pre-application guidelines, but we're gonna look at them again. So there are A through L, those are everything you've signed. From my perspective, the ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones you're going to be most concerned about during your project, right? The federal debt-free status, the drug-free workplace, trafficking in persons, those are all the bigger picture of your administration, your county. You're still prohibited from doing them, but I don't think there's much damage you can do with drug-free workplace while you're running a program. You can't let people smoke pot during your program. It's drug-free workplace, right? So non-discrimination is the first one. These are the 4 different federal acts which you have to comply with. So all of your programs that are LSTA funded have to be available to everybody, race, color, national origin, regardless of disability, regardless of sex, and regardless of age, or irregardless, right? You are meant to do your best in making your programs accessible to every single group that's called out and listed under the federal guidelines. The 5th one, it says any other non-discrimination statute. So that's the catch-all because there are things that the federal government doesn't cover, such as sexual orientation, right? That would be covered in other, right? So the programs need to be available and accessible to everybody. Any thoughts or questions about that? Okay, I know you're doing your best. A little bit deeper into that non-discrimination is the limited English proficiency policy. There is an executive order that specifically says that people with limited English proficiency need to be able to have access to your federally funded programs, right? And the Nevada State Library has a specific federally approved limited English proficiency policy. And that policy says, okay, it's not what the policy says, it's policy application. This is how you are meant to apply the limited English proficiency policy to your program, right? If you've got 4 steps, right? I don't know what I should read. So what constitutes reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access? 4 factors: the number of proportion of LEP persons eligible to be served or likely to be encountered by the program, the frequency which LEP individuals come in contact with the program, the nature and the importance of the program, activity, or service provided to the people, and the resources available to the subgrantee agency and costs. So if you have people who do not speak English fluently, well, and your program is all in English and they would like to participate, and they've indicated to you that they'd like to participate, you are required to do what you can to allow them to participate. I know that's super vague, but it's also super specific. If anybody wants to participate who does not have fluency in English, you have to take steps to try and get them to be able to comfortably participate. You can use federal funds to do that. You can build that into your budget, or you can move money around. We'll talk about moving money around later, but you have to do that. Okay. I'll stop right here right now. If anyone wants to chime in, say something, ask questions. Okay. The next thing is debarment and suspension. This means you cannot give money to a vendor without checking them against the federal debarment list. That means that the feds have a list of everyone who is forbidden from doing business with the federal government, and you've got to run their names through it to make sure that they're not. I have a link under Manage Your Grant. I am going to try and share this screen just to show you what you're meant to do. Okay, so here's the sam.gov checker. Oops, do you see it? Yes? Someone give me a thumbs up if you can see the checker. Okay, thank you. So you can do a search up here, or you can do keyword search down here. I plugged in earlier. Let's just do this. I do this for all of our vendors. We did a grant program with memory care kits, and the vendor was Penworthy. You plug Penworthy in there, and no matches found. If Penworthy were on the debar list, we couldn't do business with them. I'm also meant to plug all of you subgrantees in. We can do that right now. Who's here? Let's do Pershing County Library. Right, no matches. Good, right? That means I can do a subgrant to Pershing County Library, but you're required to do this with every vendor. Okay, most of our vendors are fine. I've never encountered a vendor that was on this list, but sometimes you will. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing the PowerPoint. Where did my PowerPoint go? Sorry, lost it. Okay, oops, now we're back at the beginning. Okay, so that's debarment and suspension. It's just making sure that you're not giving federal funds to a vendor who is excluded and barred from participating in anything. Okay, the next part of this debarment is telecom. You may have heard of the federal regulations that do not allow federal funds to be used to purchase telecommunication equipment from these particular Chinese companies. If your project has any kind of tech component that is telecom or video, you've got to make sure that you're not buying it from these corporations. Is telling me. This is just sort of the catch-all. This is like if the Secretary of Defense identifies any other company, that's covered also, even though they're not specifically called out in this particular 2 CFR 200. This does not include TikTok. So you, anyway, in case you're curious. I'll pause again. Any questions about that? Okay. The next prohibition or assurance is that federal subgrantees of federal funds need to know is that you cannot lobby at all, right, with federal funds. So anyone who is anyone who is running this program for you, if that's you or staff, they cannot do any kind of lobbying or advocacy during the program. If they're funded by LSTA, they can't do any kind of advocacy ever at all while they're funded by LSTA, right? So during your program, you can't say, go and tell, your federal representative that libraries need more funding. Right? You can say that off the clock. You can tell them that this is a federally funded program, but you cannot tell them to go tell someone to fund this program. Okay. Does that make sense? The next part is acknowledgement of IMLS support. So this is a specific language that is in the certifications. So anything that you create physically with LSTA funds or as part of your project has got to have that IMLS credit. There are taglines. I can give you taglines. At minimum, it needs to say supported by federal IMLS funds. Logos are always good. If you do a press release, there are very specific things that are required in the press release. I think that's actually the next page. But you pretty much have to slap the credit line and the logo on anything you create. If you use social media posts, it's really good to acknowledge federal funding so we can demonstrate the reach and the scope of what federal library dollars do in our state and throughout the country. Right. Here is what you need to do in press releases. So the percentage of total costs, I feel you could probably get away with 100%, right? If it's entirely federally funded, but just please don't forget to do this in your press releases and your bids. Okay. Oh, that's it for the, where is it? Non-discrimination debarment, certification of lobbying, IMLS support, federal support, right? I can talk about any of the others if you want. You can call me up, you can send me an email, but I feel that these 5 things are probably going to come up most often in your daily project activities. Then the next thing is SIPA. SIPA is the Children's Internet Protection Act. You've already signed your SIPA, right? This is just me telling you again what it means. Unless you're an academic, doesn't matter what type of library you are, if you're open to the public, with the exclusion of being academic, and you're buying anything that connects to the internet, you have to filter, right? You just have to. At the moment, I only collect 1 SIPA, but starting next year, SIPA is going to be embedded in each application because I have found that when we have multiple funding cycles, we have multiple projects submitted by the same organization, and sometimes SIPA applies to the project and sometimes it doesn't. So just be aware. You either have to filter or you can't buy anything that connects to an internet. The risk assessment, you've all filled out the risk assessment, or if you haven't, we require that you do a risk assessment, and this is just to tell you why. I look at the risk assessment and I determine what your library's chances of successfully managing and completing the project are based on your answers, right? Pretty much everyone here is low risk. If you're not low risk, that doesn't mean you're not going to get funded. You get funded. That just means that I have to create a monitoring plan for you, which most likely looks like more check-ins, maybe a site visit, maybe more reporting. Because so many of you are low risk, I went from quarterly reports just to mid-year reports. We'll talk about that later, but you have good track records, right? So that's what the risk assessment's intent is, for me to document your level of risk and my monitoring plan to ensure federal funds are spent as they are meant to be spent. Okay, so that is it for all of the assurances that someone in your organization signed and you as project managers need to be cognizant about. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is the grant and aid. I've got this little grant and aid. Oops, that didn't work. Darn it. The grant and aid is our contract. If you have not seen the grant and aid, I was going to show you one. All right, so here's a template. The important things I've highlighted, or to me, they're important, right? So it's going to have your grant number, 24-XX. It's going to have the CFDA number. So if your finance people ask you for the CFDA number, it's right there, 45310. And then 24 is the year. It's going to have your project dates. It's going to say this application submitted becomes part of the agreement. So your application and all the recommendations are part of your project scope of work, and you're obligated to follow those in carrying out the project activities. Right? It tells you what the dollar amount is, tells you when the final reimbursement request must be submitted, match. And then it tells you what you need to do if you need to move money around. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But pretty much you can move money around between budget categories. You either need to get pre-approval or you don't. Pre-approval is if you need to move anything more than 10%, right? And then if you need to do any kind of project change, you also have to notify us. And then it's got reporting, right? So this is when this officially documents when your reports are due, the mid-year report and the final report. That might actually need to be December 1st. I think that might be a Sunday. If it ever is a Sunday, just know that it's going to be the next working day after a Sunday or a holiday. This right here says that you will sign all required certifications and assurances, all those things that I just talked about. And it's got the retention schedule. And then it says that NSLIPR, the Nevada Division of Audits, LCB, or IMLS can look at your books whenever they want, right? So that just is some backup that shows that your books need to be open and you need to do everything to audit just in case any of us ever want to look at your books, right? And then right here, I'm also aware that sometimes your fiscal people need this. It is, again, it's the CFDA number. It's our State Library's Federal Award number. It shows when the period of performance end date is. So when I say you can have me on September 30th, it's because I cannot give you longer than our period of performance is, right? September 30th is when it ends. Indirect cost rate is specific to the state library. This is not specific to you, so don't worry about the zero. And then it's got contact information, and then you sign it. Okay, so that's going to be your GIA. Now, if I can get back to the PowerPoint. Every time I leave, I lose the PowerPoint. Okay. So now we are moving on to the project revisions. Right, this is just, it's what I said, but it's actually maybe spelled out a little differently. You are allowed to change your project a little bit. Right, we have your application. That's what you say you're going to do. That's what you're required to do. If you need to change it, you've got to get pre-approval, which you get with a project amendment request. If you're going to change any budget category by more than 10%, or if you're going to have any significant adjustments to implementation activities. I didn't put if you need more time because we don't have any more time beyond September 30th. Right, so if you need to do any significant changes, you've got to get pre-approval. I look at it and then the administrator, Mike Strom, signs off on it. If you need to change things, make minor adjustments, right? Just like you're going to change the items that you buy. They're all in the same category, but you're going to use a different vendor, right? That's fine. If you need to move anything around that's less than 10%, you just send an email. Minor adjustments, send an email. Just send an email because that documents what you're doing. I put it in my project files, you put it in your project files. It's all good. So you're going to send it to that NSLAPR LSTA email. That's the email for the LSTA program. It goes to me, it goes to Nina, the admin assistant. It doesn't go to one person. The likelihood of it getting lost is less. Right. So any questions about project revisions? It's also spelled out in the grants manual. If you can't remember what I said and can't find the PowerPoint, because that's highly likely, just look in the grants manual and it will tell you the same thing, right? When it's required that you get pre-approval, when it's required that you don't get pre-approval, or not required, right? Okay. Any take a break. Any thoughts, comments, questions about any of that? Okay. Next up is reports and reimbursements. There are two reports for competitive grants and cycle and mini grants, the mid-year report and the final report. That's because most of you are low risk. If you're not low risk, I will reach out to you and I will schedule an additional report. But yeah, mid-year final. Reimbursements are, oops, let me just move on. Okay. So reimbursements, I know it's very easy to put those off until very late in your project. I recommend that you don't. You are spending that money unless you've gotten an advanced payment. You're spending that money and your library is carrying that money, right? It's better if you make a habit of submitting reimbursement requests. I would say quarterly at the minimum, right? And by doing that, I feel it helps you track your spending a little bit better. And it also helps us at the state library because we do drawdowns from the federal government, and it demonstrates that we are not waiting till the last minute either to spend this money that's been awarded to us, that we've subgranted to you. So you've got to do that in a timely manner. In your reimbursement requests, you're also going to document your match. So the match is 10%. We've got to have it reported and documented somewhere. There's not a separate match report. You're going to do it as you go. You're not going to always have match. But by the end, I look, Nina looks, we have to see that 10% match. It's required, okay? Then if you do have an advanced payment, I have written it into the GIA. We need that reconciliation within 2 months of you making that expenditure. And that is good project management on my part. It's also some lessons learned because we give them money. We do need to know that you are spending it down as you have indicated you would in the budget. Is the mid-year report due 2/28 or 3/31? Oh dear. You know what? I think it is due. Let's see. What did I have on the GIA? Did I have 2/28? Because it's supposed to be March 31st. If your GIA says February 28th on it, let me know because I am prone to typos as well. Let me know because I have on my internal calendar that it's due March 31st. Oh, yeah, I was on the previous slide. Yes, everyone, I am going to take one moment right now and look at all the GIAs I have in this folder to see what the GIAs say. The GIAs I'm looking at say March 31st. So the reporting period is September 1st to February 28th, and then the report is due 1 month after. Right? If yours says differently, let me know. Okay. And we can mix it up. If you need an extension on your mid-year report, or if I put the wrong date, just let me know. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. These are the questions in the mid-year report. Do you feel your grant is helping you provide better services to your customers? There's a lot of leeway there. You can interpret this how you need to for your project, right? But we just want to know the intent behind this question is, thoughtfully, you've gotten this project. Is it doing what you wanted it to do? If you haven't gotten to that point yet, report honestly, right? It's fine. Same with, is your project on track, right? We have your timeline, right? You're supposed to be at certain places according to your timeline. Tell us if it is or if it isn't. You're not going to get your grant pulled if you're not on track, but it helps me as the LSTA coordinator understand, what's going on in the world, and it just helps. So you don't have to, you know, tell me what you think I want to hear. It's meant to be an honest reporting of how your project is going. And then the budget also helps us. It helps you. Have you spent your budget? Have you spent your money? And if you have spent it, have you actually been reimbursed for it? Because if you haven't, then maybe ask reimbursement. That's the mid-year. The intent behind the final report is, this is the final report that goes to the federal government. I used to say that I took your words and plopped them straight into the final report and sent it up, but that's not true. I do some editing, I do some wordsmithing. So the application looks the way it does because the final report looks like this. The application is meant to kind of set you up to be able to do the final report. Right. So one thing that you should probably track as you go is lessons learned. IMLS really likes lessons learned because your projects are going to be, as soon as they're approved and accepted by IMLS, they're going to be available in that public-facing state program report database. And so other libraries are looking at what you're doing and they want to know how they can replicate your wonderful project, and lessons learned help, right? So think about those, collect anecdotal information, because stories are actually what keeps the funding coming. The data is good for analysis, but the stories are what, really tug at the heartstrings and make people understand the impact of libraries, right? So collect your anecdotal stories and take some pictures. You're going to be required to submit something, some sort of something. Pictures are fantastic. Flyers are good, right, with your final report. Let's see. If you've got a planning project, there's an additional set of questions that just really digs deeper into what kind of planning and assessment you did, right? I have all those questions if you need to look at them. It's like, did you do, who did you ask? Did you do data sampling? Did you do interviews, right? Courtney, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw your hand up.
I was going to ask if a photo is of only the back of a person or persons, must you have permission?
That's a good one. I tell you, I have fudged, and if it's from the back and you can't identify that person, I've just submitted it. I would look at your local policies first, because I don't honestly know if that is the correct answer. I know that if you can identify them, and especially if they're kids, you've got to have permission. And I know some libraries just have it posted. If you're participating in this program, you know, you're giving permission for, right? I'm gonna defer locally to that. If you are not sure, I would get their permission anyway, because maybe they have a haircut or clothing.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, so my recommendations. While you're doing the project, I know it seems ages off. It's a whole year and 13 months away, whatever, 3 months, December 1st, 2025. I recommend that you take your application because people tend to be a lot more descriptive in their applications, because this is what I do with everyone's final reports. If I feel it's not robust enough, rather than send it back to you and try and twist your arm and get you to give me a little bit more, I look at your applications and I look at your mid-year reports and see if I can make the report a little bit more descriptive. So I suggest you do that, right? Look at your application because you had great ideas. You're going to do all this stuff, right? And by the time you're writing the report, it's already, you've been there, done that. You don't want to think about it again. So look at what you did and then, you know, tell us what you did. Look at your oh, yeah. Yeah, that's my recommendation. Make it as easier as yourself on as possible. You already did the application. You put so much work into it. Use that as your starting point. Okay. Oh, additional recommendations, right? So this goes back to the public facing thing, the public facing database of your final report. I highly recommend that what you write is understandable to anyone, right? They shouldn't be in your community. It shouldn't be me. It shouldn't be your staff. A complete stranger should be able to understand your project and how you use the money and how it benefited your community. You don't have to write novels, right? But you should include enough of that descriptive information. And I'm putting this in there because that's what I see in final reports, that like you're so close to it by this point, you don't think about it. You're like, we did this program, 10 people came. Like, well, that doesn't help, right? That doesn't help that person in that state or that elected official really understand what you did. That's what we're trying to do. Again, don't forget your stories. Stories are important. Okay. Next up is reimbursements. So your reimbursements, there's a form on the LibGuide, reimbursement request form. It's also a reconciliation form. It's when it asks for budget category, what I'm talking about is all those budget categories that were in your approved budget. So if you have reimbursements that were not in your approved budget, right? We may not have caught those before, but we are looking more closely now. Your approved budget is your approved budget, right? You're not really supposed to go completely off track on that. So make sure it does. And if it doesn't match, I think you should let me know. If you bought something that was not approved and you can justify it, it's probably fine. Right, I'll give an example. Someone bought a shop vac that wasn't in the approved budget, right? Like, and I could not understand how this was applicable to the program. They sent me an explanation. Totally fine, all good. We'll allow it. Okay. So if you haven't done a reimbursement before, it can be a little like hairy, a little overwhelming, but basically there's an Excel form. You take the receipt, you put the receipt number down, you put the dollar amount, you put the vendor, and then you tell us which budget category it came out of. Books came out of the supplies materials budget category. It came from Baker and Taylor. Here's the invoice number, right? We do look at those. Look at every single line and match it up to make sure everything is allowable. Remember, the state does not reimburse sales tax. So All of you libraries are tax exempt. If you have accidentally paid for sales tax, I have to deduct that from your reimbursement. You're not going to get reimbursed sales tax. We need proof of payment. That's a state policy, right? We're not going to pay something that hasn't been paid, and there's reasons for that. Paid something that hasn't been paid before, and the vendor has come squawking to us. But this is a statewide, the state of Nevada policy. And what that means for you is if you have a receipt that says paid in full, and it was paid in full by a credit card, but it doesn't say who that credit card belonged to, right? I need to know that the library paid for it, right? Like not your friends group, right? Because then we have to reimburse the friends group. So if it says paid in full and it says paid in full by your library, it's all good. If it just says invoice and it doesn't say paid in full anywhere, then again, we need that proof of payment. I know that's a big burden for a lot of you, but that's the state. So maybe we don't need the purchase order, right? You can send the purchase order, but we don't need it. I don't need it. I usually check it. Yeah, just that you bought it, paid for it. Okay. If you are using LSTA for salaries, you have to submit a time and effort. That's federal timekeeping. That's a federal regulation. You won't get reimbursed without the time and effort. Okay. Match. You've got to document it somehow. We don't specify how you document it. It can be actuals. You can have a system as long as your system is like for salaries, as long as your system is standardized and consistent. It's all good. What we have to have for match, you can fill a time and effort out for match or not. That's up to you. If it's easier to fill out the time and effort out, please do. If not, you can job title, hours spent on the project, total, right? That's what we need. Okay, best practices. I'll reiterate. Submit your reimbursement request timely, right? You don't want the state to be owing you $75,000 for a year. We want to pay you. Reconciliations, we've got to get those in a more timely manner within 2 months of making a purchase. Okay. Also, we have an internal risk assessment. We look at the timeliness and the accuracy of your reports. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop. Anyone want to ask a question? Okay. Now, where do you submit all this stuff? In the portal. Okay. The portal is, it's got a lot of functionality. I'm really trying to use the built-in functionality of reimbursements to generate all the reimbursement requests. It's a work in progress. I know some of you have struggled. Yes, Catherine.
Hi, Sue Lynn. I have a question because I suspect some of our equipment's going to cost more than what was allowed in the grant. And when I do the paperwork, do I just say where that extra amount is coming out of our budget, or how does that get reported?
So if you have the receipt, right, it'll show the full amount. And then on the line item, you put LSTA, and then the balance will be in match. Match is always good, right? We always want to document the match. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So the full price will be reflected between what's allowable and then what you covered in match.
Great. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Catherine, we still need your work program, by the way, for those funds. Anyway, okay, so reports. Whoever's doing your reports needs a login. Whoever's doing your reimbursements needs a login. Let us know. We'll create logins. You're gonna go to update. You can go 2 places. You can go to update the little bit big blue circle, or at the top, my applications or reimbursements, and it'll take you to the same place. I've given, or I'm going to give you templates for every single report. It's going to be a Word doc that you can manipulate and edit and do whatever you want with. It's going to have the questions and you can fill it in, you can write on it, you can do whatever you want. But you're going to log into the portal, right? You're going to, do I have pictures for that? I think I do. Okay. So I'm using Talking Books as an example. Hope, thank you. You're going to identify the application, and if it's got a little blue icon, it's got a report. You're going to click on the icon, you're going to click New Report, and it will give you options. So right now for Hope, there's only a statewide final report. There's no mid-year report available. But for all of you, right, there's going to be two. One's going to be mid-year, one's going to be final. And you're going to select New. Okay, and then you're just going to, it's very, very similar to the application. You're just going to scroll through the sections. If it's required, it will tell you it's required, and you won't be able to submit it without making sure that section has been submitted. It's going to have sections for uploads, because even though it's a great grant program, it doesn't do everything. So we have to do uploads, right? Same with the reimbursements. So if you ever submitted a grant before, in the old days, before we had the portal, you fill out a form, yes, scanned and emailed everything to us. So it's the same process, except instead of emailing it, you're going to upload it into the portal. And you're going to identify, which transaction it is. So like first reimbursement request, second reimbursement request, final reimbursement request, right? And this will track how much money you've spent. You can schedule payments and, right, you fill in the description, the amount, the grant number, and then save, and then you submit. So I know there's a problem where once you submit, you can't go and edit. And I was under the impression that that bug was fixed, but it's not. And so I'm talking to the developer tomorrow to find out what's going on, because you should be able to edit things once you submit. So anyway, stay tuned. But anyway, it all goes here, and then the notification goes to me and it goes to Nina, and nothing in theory can get lost, and everyone can see what you've submitted on your end. Everyone on your end can see what you've submitted and how much balance you have remaining. Okay. Okay, so that's it for the reports. You're going to do it all in the portal. It's supposed to be a one-stop shop for that. I know it's not perfect, but it's what we've got, and I personally like it. It helps me. I hope it helps you with your management. One of the benefits of the portal, if you anyone that belongs to your organization can have access to your app, right? So you can assign access to do final reports or to do reimbursements. It's all good. Everyone sees the same thing. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. I know I've probably hammered this into everyone's head. Required surveys. These are required from the federal government. If you have, I know I'm slow, there it is. If you have an instructional program for these 5 audiences, or if you have any type of activity for these 5 audiences, you have to do a survey. Good news is you only have to do public surveys if you're teaching something. So the surveys are on the LibGuide. I'm trying to find The thing about this survey is IMLS next year is going to assess the effectiveness of these surveys. So I'm going to ask you and your colleagues and coworkers and fellow project team members who are doing the surveys to think about what you like and what you don't like about it, about them, not about the surveys, not about doing the surveys, but about the questions. Are the questions actually getting to the information that you want? Because they're going to, IMLS is going to ask me, and I'm going to ask you, and they may or may not revamp them. Okay. So just think about that. Survey fatigue, avoid it, please. If you're doing lots and lots and lots of programs and you see the same people all the time, do not overwhelm them because we really want meaningful results. So just all I can say is use your best judgment. Don't annoy the cat, right? Just try and be strategic about when you deploy them. The beginning, middle, and end of a long program. You want to talk it over, you can give me a call. Okay. So speaking of surveys, because surveys are required and because this is an LSTA funded event and you are library workers, I have an instructional survey for you. And I'm going to put it in chat and you can do it now. You can do it at the end, and it's going to ask you the 4 surveys for instructional program for the library workforce. Okay. Okay. Then publicity, this sort of goes with the assurances that we talked about at the beginning. It's the actual implementation of it. If you're going to do social media, we have some hashtags for you. If you are going to do something fun, you can always invite the state library. I'm not sure that we'll be able to travel a lot, but you can invite us. I like to travel. And if you have a press release, I will forward it to IMLS, right? They don't like stuff coming in from everywhere, but so you can funnel it through me. I'll forward it to them. And a reminder that you should be putting credit lines on everything. Oh, if you have equipment over $5,000 in your budget, you know, I had to get that pre-approved by IMLS. These are some of, and you've certified that you're going to abide by 2 CFR 200 equipment. This is what that actually means. You have to do an inventory every 2 years. You have to have some sort of system in place to prevent damage and theft and loss. And you've got to ensure maintenance is going to happen. And I've probably already asked you to send me written documentation that you are going to add maintenance to your ongoing operational costs, right? But this is it in writing. If you ever need to get rid of this equipment, you've got to figure out the fair market value. If it's below $5,000, you can get rid of it. If it's above $5,000, you have to contact me, and then we make a disposition plan, right? You're allowed to sell it, but we'll talk about that. But if you bought a car, you bought an outreach vehicle, you now need to sell it. You can sell it for $20,000, then we need to have a plan. Okay. And then we're almost there. This is the final actual content slide. A reminder that the records retention schedule is kind of wonky. It doesn't progress every year. It's the same records retention schedule for the whole 5-year span of the 5-year plan. So every LSTA grant that's labeled 2023 to, oh, that should be a 0, not a 2027, needs to be retained through January 31st, 2032. And then after that, you can destroy it. Reminder to do your survey. And this is me. If you haven't heard, I have a new job starting yesterday. So I will be the assistant administrator, not full-time LSTA coordinator. We'll be hiring an LSTA coordinator If anyone wants to be the LSTA coordinator, the job will be posted. Oh, Cameron's volunteering. Excellent. Thank you. But anyway, seriously, until that happens, and even after that happens, I'm going to be really involved in making sure your LSTA programs run as smoothly as possible. I will always answer your questions. It's all good. So that was the paperwork. That was a really, really fast overview of the paperwork. And I'm sure I've left things out. Anyone want to say or comment on anything? No?
Susan,
All righty.
Jillian, wait, this is Courtney from Mineral County, and I just want
Oh.
to say thank you. Oh my gosh. Whenever I've talked about the state library, of course, Norma is gone, but I would always say, oh, I love Sue Lynn and I love Norma, because you have been so much help over the years. And I know you're going to be great in your new job. Congratulations. But you have been just instrumental, and I so appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love libraries and I love all of you guys. I know that sounds corny, sound like Sally Field, but I want to do everything possible to make sure you have strong, vibrant libraries. Okay. And that includes giving you LSTA funds. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Okay.